The widow's house collapsed in the flood, but what she found beneath the rubble, Martha Miller never imagined that at 72 she would have to rebuild her life from scratch. The flood that devastated the entire region had taken away not only her modest wooden house, but also 40 years of memories and the sense of security it offered to the 3 orphaned children she informally cared for. It was when little Sarah Beth, only 8 years old, pointed at something shining among the muddy wreckage. Partially buried under the rotten planks of what was once her bedroom floor was an old dark wooden chest with metal locks she had never seen before. With hands trembling and dirty with mud, Martha knelt beside the mysterious object, while the 10-year-old twin brothers James Paul and James David approached curiously. "Grandma Martha, where did that come from?" asked Sarah Beth, using the affectionate nickname the 3 children had adopted for her. Martha shook her head, genuinely confused. In 4 decades living in that simple house, she knew every plank, every corner, every secret of that place. She had never seen that chest before. The old locks were rusty, but not locked. Carefully, she lifted the heavy lid. What she found inside would change their lives forever. Hundreds of letters yellowed with time were carefully organized inside the chest, all addressed to her. Martha picked up the first letter with trembling fingers. The sender was a name that made her heart race, Eleanor Miller Taylor, her younger sister. "It can't be," she murmured, feeling her legs go weak. Eleanor had moved to a distant city 23 years ago, after a terrible fight between the 2 sisters. It was an argument about inheritance, about their parents' house, about wounded pride and words said in the heat of anger. Since then, they had never spoken again. Martha always believed her sister had forgotten her, that she had moved on with her life without looking back. But there were hundreds of letters, some with recent dates. With trembling hands, she opened the first letter. The handwriting was unmistakably Eleanor's. "My dear sister Martha, I hope this letter finds you well. I know our last conversation did not end on the best terms, but not a single day has passed without me thinking of you. I have been trying to send this letter for months, but it seems our local post office is having problems. I'm enclosing a check for a small amount to help with your expenses." Martha stopped reading, feeling tears welling in her eyes. "A check? What check?" She looked inside the envelope, but it was empty. James Paul, always the more observant of the twins, noticed Martha's confused expression. "What does the letter say, Grandma?" "Did your sister send money?" asked James David. Martha continued reading other letters. They all talked about money sent, about missing her, about the desire to reconcile. Eleanor mentioned a house she had bought, a business that was thriving, and always, the money she sent monthly. "Children," Martha said in a weak voice, "do you remember those deposits that appeared in my account every month? The ones I always thought were from Social Security?" Sarah Beth nodded. She always accompanied Martha on her trips to the town bank. "I always said it was strange, because you had only worked with a formal job for a few years," the girl recalled. Martha's heart raced. All these years, she had received monthly deposits into her bank account. Initially, she thought it was some system error, but when she asked at the bank, they said they were benefit deposits. She assumed they were from some social program and never questioned it. After all, the money helped her a lot in caring for the children and maintaining the house. But now, reading Eleanor's letters, she began to understand the truth. "Dear sister," she read in a letter dated 2 years ago, "I've increased the amount I send every month. I know you're caring for children who need love and support, and I want to help with that, even from a distance. I hope one day we can reconcile and I can meet these children you mention." Martha stopped abruptly. "How did she know about you?" she asked the children, but quickly realized the question made no sense. She continued reading and found the answer in a more recent letter. "The local postman, Mr. Arthur, always gives me news of you when I visit him in town. He told me about the 3 wonderful children you've taken in, about how you dedicate yourself to them as if they were your own daughters. That makes me even prouder to be your sister." "Mr. Arthur knows your sister?" asked James Paul. "Apparently so," murmured Martha, sensing there was much more to this story than she had imagined. Sarah Beth, who was exploring further into the trunk, shouted excitedly, "Grandma, there's more stuff down here." She pulled out a large sealed envelope. Inside were official documents that made Martha go pale. It was a rural property deed. The name on the document was hers, Martha Miller. "This isn't possible," she whispered. According to the deed, she was the owner of a small ranch 50 kilometers away, in the neighboring county. The property included an old house, 3 hectares of land, and a smaller building that on the document was listed as rural school. James David, who had learned to read documents by helping Martha with paperwork, studied the deed. "Grandma, this ranch was bought 5 years ago, and look here," he pointed to a line on the document. "It says it was paid in full." Martha felt the world was spinning. In 5 years, she had received tens of thousands of dollars in monthly deposits. Money she used to raise the children, to pay bills, for small repairs to the house. And now she discovered that Eleanor not only sent that money, but had also bought a property in her name. "Why did she do that?" asked Sarah Beth with the innocence of her 8 years. "And why did you never get the letters?" added James Paul. Those were exactly the questions pounding in Martha's head. In 23 years, she had never received a single letter from her sister. She believed Eleanor had completely forgotten her. But here was proof that her sister never stopped thinking of her, never stopped caring for her from afar. "Someone was taking your letters," said James David, with the seriousness of someone solving a mystery. "But who would do that?" questioned Sarah Beth. Martha looked around the rubble of her old house. For decades, she had lived there in peace, greeting the neighbors, receiving mail normally. Who could have had an interest in intercepting letters from her sister? "Let's go find Mr. Arthur," decided Martha, feeling a mix of anger, confusion, and hope. If he knows Eleanor, maybe he can explain what happened. The 4 of them carefully gathered all the letters and documents, putting everything back in the trunk. Martha carried the heavy object with the help of the twins, while Sarah Beth held the most important documents. The walk to the center of the small town was silent. Each was lost in their own thoughts. The children could barely contain their anxiety to discover more about this mysterious Aunt Eleanor, while Martha wavered between the emotion of knowing her sister never forgot her and the anger of discovering someone had prevented them from reconciling years ago. The post office was on the town square, in an old building that had served the region for decades. Mr. Arthur Collins was a local institution. At 65, he knew the lives of all the residents and always had a kind word for each customer. When he saw Martha approaching with the 3 children and an old trunk, Mr. Arthur felt his stomach tighten. He knew exactly what was happening. "Mrs. Martha," he said, avoiding looking directly into her eyes, "how are you all after the flood? I heard you lost your home." "We're fine, Mr. Arthur. Actually, we found something interesting in the rubble." Martha opened the trunk and showed the hundreds of letters. The postman visibly paled. "I need to know one thing," said Martha, trying to stay calm. "Do you know my sister Eleanor?" Mr. Arthur sighed deeply. He knew this day would come eventually. "Yes, I do, Mrs. Martha. Eleanor has been coming here in person once a month for over 20 years. "What do you mean, coming here?" "She drives 2 hours every month to deliver the letters personally and check if they arrived safely. She always asks if you received them, if you replied, if you need anything." Martha felt her legs go weak. "Eleanor drove 2 hours every month to make sure the letters arrived. Then why did I never receive any?" Mr. Arthur looked around, clearly uncomfortable. "Mrs. Martha, this is a conversation that needs to happen in private." Sarah Beth, perceptive as always, noticed the tension. "Grandma, can we wait in the town square?" "No," said Martha firmly. "These children are part of my family. Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of them." Mr. Arthur took a deep breath. "Very well. 23 years ago, right after Eleanor started sending the first letters, your neighbor, the late Harold Jenkins, came to talk to me. He said you were going through a very difficult time, that any correspondence from your sister would only bring more suffering." "Harold did that?" Martha could hardly believe it. Harold Jenkins had been her closest neighbor for decades. He died 5 years ago of natural causes, at 82 years old. He was a reserved man who had always been helpful when she needed help with small repairs around the house or when the children were being too noisy. He said you two had a terrible fight, that you had sworn never to speak to Eleanor again, and that receiving letters from her would only harm your mental health. And you believed him? Mrs. Martha, Mr. Harold was a respected man in the community. Besides, he offered to receive the letters at his house and deliver them to you when he thought the time was right. He said he had known you both since you were children and knew how to handle the situation. James Paul and James David exchanged glances. Even as children, they could sense something was very wrong with this story. "So he kept all the letters?" asked Sarah Beth. "All these years," confirmed Mr. Arthur. "Eleanor always asked why you never replied, and I would pass on the answer that Mr. Harold gave me, that you needed more time, that you were still hurt, but that one day you would reconcile." Martha felt a mix of anger and sadness. Harold had decided on his own the fate of the relationship between two sisters. For 23 years, she believed Eleanor had abandoned her, while Eleanor believed Martha did not want to reconcile. "And the money?" asked Martha. "Did Eleanor always send money with the letters?" Mr. Arthur nodded, embarrassed. "Every month, checks, cash, money orders. Mr. Harold offered to deposit it all into your account so you wouldn't be without financial support, but wouldn't link the money to Eleanor. He thought that way you could reconcile gradually without pressure." "But we never reconciled," said Martha bitterly. "Because Mr. Harold never delivered any letters," said James Paul, who had already reached the obvious conclusion. Mr. Arthur hung his head, clearly feeling guilty for having been part of that plan for so long. "When Mr. Harold passed away 5 years ago, I didn't know what to do with the letters anymore. Eleanor kept coming every month, and I kept receiving them, but I had no one to deliver them to. I kept everything hoping to one day find a solution." "Where are those letters from the last 5 years?" asked Martha. "At my house, hundreds of them. Eleanor never gave up, never lost hope." Sarah Beth, ever practical, asked the question on everyone's mind. "And what about the letters that were left at Mr. Harold's house?" "That's a good question," admitted Mr. Arthur. "The house was sold to an out-of-town family after he passed. I imagine the letters are still there, hidden somewhere." Martha felt a wave of determination. For decades, she and Eleanor had lived a separation based on a lie. Harold, with his good intentions, had destroyed the chance of reconciliation between two sisters who loved each other. "I need to talk to Eleanor," said Martha. "She comes here next week," informed Mr. Arthur. "Every third Thursday of the month, promptly at 2 in the afternoon. I can't wait a week. Do you have her address?" Mr. Arthur went to the files and returned with a card. Eleanor Miller Taylor lived in a town 2 hours away, in a house that, according to notes on the card, she had bought 5 years ago. "I'm going there," decided Martha. "Grandma, how are we going to get there?" asked Sarah Beth. "The flood took the town bus too." It was true. The flood had caused damage throughout the region. Bridges had collapsed, roads were blocked, and public transportation was suspended. "I can take you," offered Mr. Arthur, feeling guilty for his part in the situation. "I have a car, and I know the back roads." Martha looked at the 3 children. They had lost everything in the flood, just like her. They were living temporarily at the local school, which had been turned into an emergency shelter. It was a precarious situation, but at least they were together. "What do you think?" she asked the children. "Do you want to meet Aunt Eleanor?" The 3 nodded excitedly. The possibility of Martha having family, of them no longer being alone in the world, was thrilling. "Then let's go," decided Martha. The trip to the neighboring county was tense. Mr. Arthur drove carefully along the back roads, dodging fallen trees and flooded stretches. Martha held the trunk with the letters on her lap, while the children looked out the window, observing the damage the flood had caused throughout the region. "Grandma," said Sarah Beth during the trip, "what if Aunt Eleanor doesn't like us?" "Why wouldn't she like you?" asked Martha, stroking the girl's hair. "Because we're orphans. Because we're not real family." Martha's heart tightened. In the last 5 years, since the 3 children had come into her life under different circumstances, she had never made them feel like they were less than family. Sarah Beth had arrived first, at 3 years old when her maternal grandmother passed away, and there was no one else to care for her. The twins came 2 years later, when the local orphanage closed due to lack of resources and some children needed temporary homes. What was supposed to be temporary became permanent when Martha realized she could no longer live without those 3 children filling her home with life and joy. "You are my real family," said Martha firmly. family isn't just about blood. It's about love, care, about being present in someone's life. And you are the most important thing in my life." James Paul, always serious for his 10 years, asked a question that had worried Martha since they found the letters. "What if Aunt Eleanor wants you to go live with her, far away from us?" "That won't happen," Martha assured him. "We are a family, and families stay together." But deep down, Martha had her own worries. Eleanor had bought a rural property, sent money for decades, shown immense affection even from a distance. What if she expected Martha to move closer to her? What if she didn't want to share her older sister's attention with 3 children? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. Eleanor's house was in the rural area of town, a simple but well-kept building, surrounded by fruit trees and a colourful garden. When Mr. Arthur parked the car in front of the house, Martha felt her heart race. 23 years. 2 decades and 3 years without seeing her younger sister, without hearing her voice, without knowing how she was. "She's home," observed James David, pointing to the lights on and the smoke coming from the chimney. Martha took a deep breath, picked up the chest with the letters, and headed to the front door, accompanied by the 3 children and Mr. Arthur. When she rang the bell, she heard footsteps approaching. The door opened, and there was Eleanor. She had aged, of course. Her hair was grey, there were wrinkles around her eyes, but her smile was exactly the same as Martha remembered from their youth. Eleanor's smile faded when she saw who was at the door. She brought a hand to her chest, as if in pain. "Martha!" she gasped, barely able to believe it. "Hi, Eleanor," said Martha, her voice choked. "We need to talk." Eleanor looked at the 3 children and at Mr. Arthur, trying to understand what was happening. Then she saw the chest in Martha's hands and her expression changed. "You found the letters," she said, not as a question, but as a statement. "All of them," confirmed Martha. Eleanor began to cry. Not a quiet cry, but deep sobs from someone who had carried pain for decades. "I thought you hated me," she said through tears. "I thought you would never forgive me for what happened that day. And I thought you had completely forgotten me." The 2 sisters embraced there at the door, crying, while the 3 children watched, moved. It was a moment they had dreamed of for over 2 decades. "Please come in," said Eleanor, wiping her tears. "We have a lot to talk about." Eleanor's house was cozy, decorated with old photographs and wooden furniture. The children were a little shy at first, but Eleanor treated them with such affection that they soon felt at ease. "So you are the 3 wonderful children Mr. Arthur always tells me about," said Eleanor, offering homemade cookies and juice. "Martha, you have no idea how proud I am when I hear the stories about how you care for these children." "You knew about them?" asked Martha. "Of course I knew. Mr. Arthur told me everything in our monthly chats. How you took in Sarah Beth when she needed a home, how you opened your house to the twins, how you dedicated yourself to them as if they were your own children." Sarah Beth, curious as always, couldn't contain herself. "You came here every month just to send letters to Grandma Martha." "Every month," confirmed Eleanor. "For 23 years. I never missed a trip." "And why did you never give up?" asked James Paul. Eleanor looked at Martha with tenderness. "Because family is family. Because I knew that one day our silly fight would be overcome and we would be real sisters again." Mr. Arthur, who had remained silent, finally told the whole truth about Harold Jenkins's plan. Eleanor was shocked to learn that the letters never reached their destination, that Martha never knew about the money sent monthly, that both had lived decades believing a lie. "Harold thought he was helping," said Eleanor, trying not to show anger toward a man who had already passed away. "He was always very protective of you, Martha. I remember when we were children, he already had that tendency to want to solve other people's problems." "He destroyed 23 years of our relationship," said Martha bitterly. "But he couldn't destroy the love between us," replied Eleanor, holding her sister's hand. "And look, you raised 3 wonderful children in that time. I built a stable and prosperous life. Perhaps we weren't ready to reconcile before. Perhaps this was the right time. Sarah Beth, ever practical, asked the question on everyone's mind. And now? What's going to happen to us? Eleanor looked at the three children and then at Martha. Now you come live with me, all of you. Martha felt a chill in her stomach. Eleanor, I can't accept your charity. Charity? Eleanor laughed. Martha, you own half of everything I have. The ranch I bought 5 years ago, I bought it thinking of both of us. This house, it has enough rooms for a large family. The business I started, I always dreamed of running it with you. What kind of business? Asked Martha, curious. A rural school. I'm an educator. I graduated 15 years ago. When I found out you were caring for children, I began dreaming of a project where we could educate and care for children who need support. James David's eyes lit up. Like a special school. Exactly. A school where children who have lost their families or who are in difficult situations can study and receive affection at the same time. The idea was tempting, but Martha still had fears. Eleanor, things have changed a lot. I'm not that 20-year-old girl anymore. I'm 72. My energy isn't the same. And I'm 68, replied Eleanor. I'm not a young woman anymore either. But together, with the experience we've gained, we can do something very special. Sarah Beth approached Eleanor timidly. Would you really like us living here? Eleanor knelt to the girl's height. Sarah Beth, I've dreamed of meeting you for 5 years. Every time Mr. Arthur told me a story about you, I imagined what it would be like to live with such special children. What if we don't get along? Asked James Paul, always cautious. Then we'll learn together. That's what family is, learning to live together, to respect each other, to love each other, even when there are differences. Eleanor stood up and went to a bookshelf, from where she took out a photo album. I want to show you something. She opened the album to a specific page. It was an old photo of 2 girls playing in the backyard. This is me and your Grandma Martha when we were children. Look how alike we were. The children watched, fascinated. Indeed, the 2 sisters had very similar features when they were young. And this one, Eleanor turned the page, is the last photo we took together at Martha's 18th birthday party. In the photograph, the 2 sisters appeared hugging, smiling. Martha felt a wave of nostalgia. I remember that party, she said, her voice choked. You had just finished high school and were excited to start college. And you were dating that boy. What was his name again? William Robert, Martha laughed. My first and only serious boyfriend. What happened to him? Asked Sarah Beth, curious about her grandma's romantic past. Life took us in different directions, Martha replied diplomatically. Eleanor, however, remembered more details. William Robert was a good man. He worked so hard to buy that house where you lived. You were engaged, weren't you? Martha felt her heart tighten. It was a part of her life she rarely revisited. We were. But when the 2 of you fought, when you moved away and I was left responsible for caring for our sick parents, William Robert thought it was too much responsibility. He wanted to build a family, not care for sick parents and deal with family problems. He abandoned you? Asked James Paul, indignant. It wasn't quite like that. He was honest about his limitations. He said he wasn't prepared to deal with so much complexity. We preferred to end the engagement rather than marry out of obligation. Eleanor sat down beside her sister. I didn't know that. If I had known you had to care for our parents alone. You had just gotten a scholarship in another city. I wasn't going to ask you to give up your dreams because of our stupid fight. What stupid fight was that? Asked Sarah Beth. The 2 sisters exchanged a look. It was a story they preferred not to remember, but perhaps needed to be told so it could finally be overcome. Our parents had a house and a small piece of land, explained Martha. When they got sick, they needed constant care. Eleanor had gotten an opportunity to study in another city, and I thought she should stay to help. And I thought Martha was being selfish, trying to stop me from following my dreams, continued Eleanor. I said horrible things, accusations that weren't true. And I retaliated with equally horrible words, admitted Martha. I said she was ungrateful, that she didn't care about the family. In the end, I moved away anyway, and Martha stayed caring for our parents alone for 3 years until they passed. The children listened to the story in silence. For them, who had lost their biological families, It was hard to understand how two sisters who loved each other could stay apart for so long because of pride. "You were young," said Sarah Beth with surprising wisdom for her 8 years. "Young people sometimes say things they don't mean." "Very young and very proud," agreed Eleanor. "But now we are older and I hope wiser." Mr. Arthur, who had been following the whole conversation, stood up. "I think my mission here is complete. You still have a lot to talk about." "Mr. Arthur," said Martha, "thank you so much for bringing us here, and thank you for taking care of the letters all these years, even when you didn't know what to do with them. I just regret not discovering the truth about Mr. Harold sooner," he said, genuinely remorseful. "What matters is, we discovered it now," said Eleanor, "and now we can rebuild the lost time." After Mr. Arthur left, the two sisters and the 3 children settled in the living room, surrounded by the letters Eleanor had written over more than 2 decades. "Would you like me to read some of the more recent letters?" asked Eleanor. The children nodded excitedly. Eleanor chose a letter from 6 months ago. "My dear sister Martha, today marks 23 years since our separation. I don't know if you still think of me, but not a day goes by that I don't remember you. I finished renovating the rural school on the ranch. It is ready to receive up to 20 children. I dream of the day we can work together, caring for children who need love and education. Mr. Arthur told me that Sarah Beth is learning to read very quickly and that the twins are excellent at math. How I would love to help with their education." Sarah Beth interrupted. "You already knew I liked to read." "Mr. Arthur told me everything about you. Sarah Beth, I know you dream of being a teacher when you grow up. James Paul, I know you like to fix broken things and have a knack for carpentry. James David, I know you love to draw and have a special talent for art." The twins were impressed by how much Eleanor knew about them. "How does she know these things?" whispered James David to Martha. "Because she loves you through me," replied Martha, finally understanding the depth of her sister's care. "All these years she's looked after our family from a distance." Eleanor continued reading letters, each one revealing more details about how she had kept up with their lives through the reports from Mr. Arthur. She knew about the children's school grades, about the health problems Martha had faced in recent years, about the financial difficulties that were always overcome with creativity and determination. "Eleanor," said Martha, moved, "you were the most present sister I could have had, even from far away. And you were the most dedicated mother these children could have had, even though you're not their biological mother." Sarah Beth snuggled into Martha's lap. "Grandma, do we have an even bigger family now?" "Much bigger," confirmed Martha, stroking the girl's hair. "Now we have Aunt Eleanor too." "And a ranch with a school?" asked James Paul, excited. "If you want," said Eleanor, "but that's a decision we all need to make together." James David, who had remained quiet for a while, finally asked the question that was worrying him. "What if other children come to study at the school? Will we still be special to you?" Eleanor and Martha looked at each other, understanding the boy's insecurity. "James David," said Eleanor tenderly, "you 3 will always be special. No matter how many children pass through our school, you are family. That will never change." "How can we be sure?" insisted Sarah Beth, expressing a fear they all shared. Martha thought for a moment before answering. "You know what we're going to do? We'll create a family agreement, rules that guarantee our family always comes first, even when we're taking care of other children." The idea excited the children, who loved it when Martha created contracts and agreements to solve problems. "What kind of rules?" asked James Paul. "For example," said Eleanor, "every Friday night will always be our family time. Just the 5 of us, no other children, no work, just family. And at Sunday breakfast," added Martha, "we'll always have our special talk, where each one can talk about anything that's worrying them or making them happy." The children began to get excited about the idea. "What if we don't like some new child who arrives?" asked Sarah Beth. "Then we talk about it," said Eleanor. "Family solves problems by talking, not by hiding feelings." "What if you 2 fight again?" asked James David, expressing the deepest fear. The 2 sisters looked at each other. It was a legitimate concern. "If we fight," said Martha, "we promise we won't let the fight affect you, and we promise we'll always solve our problems by talking, not by going 23 years without speaking. We also promise, added Eleanor, that you three will always have a say in the family's important decisions. The children seemed satisfied with these assurances. So, do you agree to come live with us? Asked Eleanor. The three children looked at each other, whispered among themselves for a few minutes, and then Sarah Beth, as always the group's spokesperson, announced the decision. We accept, but on one condition. What is it? Asked the two sisters in unison. We want to help take care of the school. We don't just want to study there, we want to work alongside you. Eleanor smiled. Of course. You know better than anyone what a child needs when they're without a family. You would be perfect helpers. And so on that rainy night, a family that had been separated for decades finally reunited. But there were still mysteries to solve. The next morning, Eleanor showed the property to the new family. The main house was larger than Martha's old home, with 5 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a large room that Eleanor had turned into a library. Each of you can choose your own room, said Eleanor, and you can decorate it however you like. The children ran to explore the rooms, thrilled at the possibility of having their own space for the first time in years. Eleanor, said Martha when they were alone, this is very generous of you, but I need to contribute somehow. Martha, you will contribute what is most valuable, your experience caring for children. I know about formal education, but you know about love, care, about how a child feels when they lose everything. Even so, I want to pay my share of the expenses, Eleanor laughed. With what money? You lost everything in the flood. I have the savings from the bank account, and I can work. I still have the energy to work. Martha, you've worked your whole life. You took care of our parents, raised 3 children, always sacrificed for others. Let me take care of you now. I don't want to be a burden. A burden? Eleanor seemed genuinely offended. Martha, you are my sister. For 23 years I dreamed of this moment. You are not a burden. You are the fulfillment of my greatest dream. Sarah Beth came running into the room. Grandma Martha, Aunt Eleanor, you have to see the school. The two sisters followed the excited girl to what had once been an abandoned rural schoolhouse. Eleanor had spent the last 5 years lovingly renovating the building. My goodness, murmured Martha as she entered the building. The school had been transformed into a welcoming and modern environment. There were 3 classrooms with colorful tables, a children's library, an art room, and even a small kitchen where the children could learn to cook. How many children do you plan to serve here? Asked Martha. Initially about 12, children from the area who need tutoring, or children in vulnerable situations who need a complementary educational environment. James Paul was exploring the art room. Aunt Eleanor, can I use this workbench for my woodworking projects? Of course, in fact, I was thinking you could teach basic woodworking to the other children. What do you think? The boy's eyes lit up. The idea of teaching something he knew how to do well to other children was exciting. And can I help in the library? Asked Sarah Beth. You would be a perfect helper. You can help the younger children who are learning to read. James David was examining the school's walls. Can I paint a mural here? James David, I was hoping you'd ask that. I bought all the necessary paints. How about creating a mural that tells the story of our family? The 3 children were thrilled with the possibilities. For the first time in their lives, they weren't just recipients of care, but could also contribute and help other children. When do we start? Asked Sarah Beth. First, said Martha, we need to settle some practical matters. Where will we live while the other children haven't arrived? How will we organize ourselves? You can stay in the main house with me, said Eleanor. There are enough rooms for everyone. And the other children? Asked James Paul. The school will operate part-time. The children will come in the morning or afternoon, but will return to their homes to sleep. We will only take in children to live with us in very special cases. What kind of special cases? Asked Sarah Beth. Eleanor looked at Martha, as if asking permission to speak about a delicate subject. Children like you, she said gently, children who lost their families and need a temporary or permanent home. So we'll be like big brothers to these children? Asked James David. Exactly, confirmed Martha. You understand better than anyone how a child feels when they lose their family. You can help these children adapt. The prospect of having younger siblings to care for excited the three children. For years, they had been the youngest in the family, always receiving care. Now they would have the chance to care for others. "But first," said Eleanor, "we need to solve a problem." "What problem?" asked Martha, worried. "The letters that were left at Harold's house. There might be important information there. Perhaps more recent letters, maybe documents. We need to recover them." Martha agreed. For over 2 decades, Harold had been intercepting correspondence. It was possible there was much more than they imagined hidden in his old house. "The family that bought the house might not want to let us search the property," observed Martha. "That's why we need to explain the situation properly," said Eleanor. "If they understand there was a misunderstanding, maybe they'll cooperate." Sarah Beth had an idea. "Why don't we write a letter explaining everything? A very polite letter asking for help." The girl's suggestion was accepted by everyone. They spent the rest of the morning drafting a careful letter, explaining the situation without blaming Harold Jenkins, but making it clear they needed to recover the intercepted correspondence. In the afternoon, Eleanor took the whole family to Harold's old house. The property had been well cared for by the new owners, a young family with 2 small children. The lady of the house, Susan Taylor, was a friendly woman of about 35. When Eleanor explained the situation, she was shocked. "So the previous owner was intercepting letters?" asked Susan. "Not out of malice," Martha quickly explained. "He thought he was protecting our family from more suffering, but he ended up preventing 2 sisters from reconciling for over 2 decades. Susan looked at her husband David, who had joined the conversation. "What a sad story," commented David. "Of course you can search the house. In fact, we found some strange things when we moved here 3 years ago." "What kind of things?" asked Eleanor, hopeful. "Mainly in the attic. There were several boxes with papers and letters. We thought they were the previous owner's personal documents and stored everything, untouched. We never knew what to do with those things." The 3 children looked at each other, excited by the possibility of finding more clues about the family history. David took everyone to the attic. Indeed, there were several cardboard boxes carefully stored. When they opened the first box, they found hundreds of letters, all addressed to Martha and sent by Eleanor. "My God," murmured Eleanor. "He kept all of them." There were letters from every year, organized chronologically. Harold had kept a meticulous record of all the intercepted correspondence. In the second box, they found something even more surprising. A notebook where Harold had written down his reflections on the situation of the 2 sisters. James Paul, who could read well, began to read some notes. "Year 2015. Eleanor continues sending letters monthly. Today she brought a photo of the 2 of them when they were young. I see the suffering in her eyes. Perhaps it's time to deliver the letters to Martha, but she still gets very sad when her sister's name is mentioned." Year 2018. Martha took in 2 more children. She has 5 children now, all needing attention and special care. If she knew that Eleanor is sending money specifically to help with these children, maybe she'd be embarrassed. It's better to keep the secret a little longer. Year 2020. Eleanor asked directly if Martha didn't want to reconcile. I was at a loss for what to say. Martha never speaks of her sister, but sometimes I see her looking at the horizon with sadness. Does she miss her too? The notes revealed that Harold truly believed he was helping, but they also showed that over the years he had realized he might be making a mistake. In the third box, they found something that would change everything. Letters that Martha had written but never sent. "What do you mean?" asked Sarah Beth, confused. Eleanor examined the letters. There were several, dated from different years, all addressed to her. Martha had written them, but for some reason never sent them. "Martha," said Eleanor, her voice choked, "you wrote to me?" Martha picked up one of the letters with trembling hands. She immediately recognized her own handwriting. "I wrote letters to you every year on your birthday," she admitted in a low voice, "but I never had the courage to send them." "Why?" "Because I was afraid you wouldn't want to receive them. I was afraid of rejection." Eleanor began to cry again. "And I sent letters every month, afraid you wouldn't want to reply." James David made the obvious observation. You two were afraid of each other all these years." "Apparently," said Martha, laughing through her tears. Susan, who had witnessed the entire discovery, was visibly moved. "What an incredible story," she remarked. "You lived a separation based on misunderstandings and fear. And Mr. Harold tried to protect you all by preventing you from getting hurt more," added David, "but ended up causing more suffering." Sarah Beth had a surprising reflection for an 8-year-old. "Sometimes, when we try to protect the people we love, we end up getting in the way instead of helping." "Very wise, little one," said Eleanor, impressed with the girl's maturity. They spent the rest of the afternoon going through the boxes. They found hundreds of letters from Eleanor, dozens of unsent letters from Martha, photographs that Eleanor had sent over the years, and even Christmas presents that never reached their destination. "Look at this," said James Paul, pulling a still-sealed gift wrap from a box. The tag read, "For Sarah Beth, with love from Aunt Eleanor, Christmas 2023. Sarah Beth was in shock. "A present for me? But I didn't even know Aunt Eleanor last Christmas. I knew of your existence through Mr. Arthur," explained Eleanor, "and I dreamed of one day being able to give presents to you and your siblings." There were presents for all three of them, from several different years. Eleanor had bought and wrapped Christmas and birthday presents for children she had never met in person, but whom she loved through her sister's accounts. "Why did Mr. Harold keep even the presents?" asked James David. David found a letter from Harold addressed to himself, as if it were a personal reminder. "I cannot deliver the presents without explaining where they came from. If Martha finds out that Eleanor is sending presents for the children, she'll realize they are still in contact. It's better to keep everything until they are ready to reconcile." "He truly believed he was doing the right thing," observed Martha, no longer angry with Harold. "And in a way," said Eleanor, "perhaps he was. If we had reconciled years ago, maybe we wouldn't have been ready for this school project. Maybe you wouldn't have developed this amazing skill for caring for children in vulnerable situations." Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out, now continuing. In the last box, they found something none of them expected. Official documents showing that Harold had created an educational fund in the names of the two sisters. "What is this?" asked Martha, examining the papers. David, who worked as an accountant, analyzed the documents. "From what I understand here, Mr. Harold invested part of the money that Eleanor sent over the years. Instead of depositing everything into your account, Martha, he set aside a portion and kept investing it." "He made investments with my money?" asked Eleanor, confused. "Not exactly," continued David. "It seems he used his own resources too. There are notes here saying he wanted to create a fund to ensure the educational future of the children Martha was raising." Susan picked up another document. "Here it says the fund has over $200,000. Silence fell over the attic. $200,000 was a significant amount, enough to keep the rural school running for several years. "Harold did this?" asked Martha, incredulous. "Apparently," said David, "and you are the legal beneficiaries of the fund." Eleanor sat on the attic floor trying to process all the information. "So, all these years, besides intercepting our letters, Harold was also creating a fund to secure the children's future?" "It seems so," confirmed David. Sarah Beth asked the question on everyone's mind. "Does that mean Mr. Harold was good or bad?" Martha thought for a long time before answering. "It means he was human, Sarah Beth. He made mistakes while trying to do good. He separated two sisters for 23 years, but at the same time he ensured we would have resources to care for you and other children in the future. Sometimes people do the wrong things for the right reasons," added Eleanor. James Paul, always practical, made the obvious observation, "So now you have even more money for the school?" "Apparently," replied Eleanor, still processing all the revelations. Susan and David were extremely generous, helping the family carry all the boxes with the letters and documents. They also offered to help with any legal processes needed to access the educational fund created by Harold. Back at Eleanor's house, the family spent the entire night reading letters that had been separated for decades. It was like watching two parallel movies, Eleanor's letters showed her evolution over the years, her professional successes, her concerns for her sister, her dreams of reconciliation. The unsent letters from Martha showed her longing, her struggles, her successes in raising the children, and always, the love for her younger sister. "You two are so alike," observed Sarah Beth after hearing several letters being read. "You wrote about the same things, worried about the same things." "It's true," agreed James David. "In Aunt Eleanor's letters, she always asks about our health, our school, if we're happy. And in Grandma Martha's letters, she always tells about us and asks how Aunt Eleanor is doing." "You never stopped being sisters," concluded James Paul. "You just stopped talking." The children's observation deeply touched the two sisters. For over 2 decades, they had maintained an invisible connection, caring for each other from a distance even without knowing. "Now that we know the whole truth," said Eleanor, "we can finally move forward. Together. And with enough resources to keep the school running for years," added Martha, still amazed by the discovery of the educational fund. Sarah Beth yawned. It had been a long and emotional day for an 8-year-old. "Grandma Martha, Aunt Eleanor, can I ask a question?" "Of course, dear." "Now that you've found each other again, will you live happily ever after like in fairy tales?" Eleanor and Martha laughed at the innocence of the question. "Sarah Beth," said Eleanor, "real life isn't like fairy tales. We're going to have problems, we're going to disagree about some things, we're going to have hard days. But," Martha continued, "we're going to face all of that together, and we're going to talk about our problems instead of going 23 years without speaking." "And will you talk to us too when you have problems?" asked James Paul. "Always," the two sisters promised in unison. The twins looked at each other and smiled. After years of living in uncertainty, they finally had a stable and predictable family. "So now we're a family of 5, asked James David. "A family of 5 that will soon grow," said Eleanor, "when we start taking in other children at the school." "But will we always be the first?" insisted Sarah Beth, still with some insecurities. "You will always be the children of our heart," Martha assured. "The other children will be cared for and loved, but you are real family." Satisfied with these assurances, the 3 children finally agreed to go to sleep. It would be the first night of the new family reunited. While the children got ready for bed, Eleanor and Martha talked alone in the living room. "Martha, I need to ask something that's been worrying me for years." "What is it?" "Did you never get married? Never have biological children? Never build a family of your own because of me?" Martha thought carefully before answering. "Eleanor, I had several opportunities to marry over the years. Some good men who treated me well, but I always chose the children who needed me. That doesn't answer my question. The answer is, I don't know. Maybe part of me was always waiting for this moment. Maybe I knew deep down that one day we would be sisters again, and that it would be better this way." Eleanor held her sister's hand. "I was married once. It only lasted 3 years. Why didn't it work out? Because he didn't understand why I sent money to a sister who never answered my letters. He said it was a waste, that I should use the money to have my own children." "And what did you say?" "That family is family, even when they're far away. That I couldn't give up on you, even when it seemed like you had given up on me." The two sisters sat in silence for a few minutes, processing the day's revelations. "Martha, do you think we made the right choices?" "I think we made the choices we could make at the time, and in the end, they brought us here, together with 3 wonderful children and a beautiful project ahead of us." 3 wonderful children you raised practically alone," Eleanor reminded. "And a beautiful school you built while dreaming of us," Martha returned. Sarah Beth appeared in the living room in her pajamas. "Grandma Martha, Aunt Eleanor, I can't sleep." "Why, sweetie?" asked Martha, concerned. "I'm too happy. When I get too happy, I can't sleep." Eleanor laughed and opened her arms to the girl. "Come here, Sarah Beth. How about you sleep here in the living room with us tonight? We can have a family pajama party." The girl's eyes lit up. "Can I call the boys too?" "Of course." In a few minutes, the 5 of them were settled in the living room with mattresses and blankets. It was like an indoor campout, but much better because it was a family celebration. "Aunt Eleanor," said James Paul, "can I ask something?" "Of course." "Are you afraid we're going to be too much trouble?" Eleanor looked at the boy tenderly. "James Paul, I waited 23 years for this moment. I'm not afraid of work. I'm afraid of not being a good enough aunt for you." "You're already a good aunt," Sarah Beth assured, "because you worry about us. And because you love Grandma Martha," added James David. "When someone loves Grandma Martha, they're automatically a good person." Martha laughed, touched by the children's loyalty. "And now that we're a big family," she said, "we'll have to learn to share responsibilities. You'll have to help me take care of Aunt Eleanor too." "How so?" asked Sarah Beth. "Aunt Eleanor worked alone for many years. Now she has a family to take care of. We need to take care of her too, make her feel loved and valued." The children took the suggestion seriously. "I can make breakfast for Aunt Eleanor," offered Sarah Beth. "I can help with the house repairs," said James Paul. "And I can make pretty drawings to decorate her room," added James David. Eleanor was visibly moved. "You're already making me feel loved, just by existing, just by being here." That night, for the first time in decades, Martha slept without worrying about the future. She had her sister back, she had her 3 children safe, and she had a life project that would give meaning to the years to come. Eleanor also slept in peace, knowing her wait had been worth it. The family she had always dreamed of was finally complete. The 3 children slept hugging each other, knowing they would never have to worry about being separated or being without a family again. The next morning, the new family woke up with ambitious plans. The rural school needed some adjustments to function perfectly, and there were legal procedures to formalize both the permanent custody of the children and access to the educational fund created by Harold. "Where do we start?" asked Eleanor during breakfast. "First," said Martha, "we need to formalize our legal situation regarding the children. Then we can worry about the school." Sarah Beth, ever practical, made a suggestion. "How about we make a list of everything that needs to be done?" The idea was accepted by everyone. They spent the morning creating detailed lists, necessary legal documents, school renovations, educational materials, contacts with the local community, organizing the house to accommodate more people. "This list is huge," observed James Paul. "Will we be able to do everything?" "Of course we will," said Eleanor with confidence. "We're a team now. And we have time," Martha reminded them. "We don't need to solve everything in a week." James David had a creative idea. "How about if each of us is responsible for some tasks? That way everyone helps." The suggestion was accepted. Sarah Beth was put in charge of helping organize the school library. James Paul would take care of small repairs and improvements to the facilities. James David would create visual and decorative materials. Eleanor would coordinate the educational and legal aspects. Martha would supervise everything and handle the administrative part. "We're like a family business," joked Sarah Beth. "Exactly," agreed Eleanor. "A business that takes care of children." During the following weeks, the family worked tirelessly to get the project up and running. The legal processes progressed without major problems, especially after David, the accountant who had helped them, offered to assist with all the documentation. The educational fund created by Harold was released without complications, and the money would be used exclusively to keep the school running and to provide quality educational materials. "Harold really thought of everything," commented Eleanor, when they learned the fund had earned interest over the years and was now worth even more than they had initially imagined. "He may have separated 2 sisters for 23 years, said Martha, "but he ensured they had the resources to care for children for the rest of their lives." The school renovations were completed with the help of community volunteers who were inspired by the family's story and wanted to contribute to the project. Sarah Beth proved to be an excellent organizer, cataloguing all the library books by age and difficulty level. James Paul discovered a real talent for woodworking, creating custom furniture for the school. James David painted incredible murals on the walls, telling stories through colorful drawings. "We are ready to receive the first children," announced Eleanor on a sunny spring morning. "How will we find these children?" asked Martha. "Actually," said Eleanor, "they have already found us. During the weeks of renovation, several families from the area had sought out the school. interested in enrolling their children. Some children needed tutoring. Others came from families with financial difficulties and needed a safe educational environment after school. "How many children have enrolled?" asked Sarah Beth, eager to meet the new classmates. 15, replied Eleanor. "Children between 6 and 12 years old." "And will they all study together?" asked James Paul. "We'll divide them into groups by age and knowledge level," explained Eleanor. "But there will be activities where everyone will participate together." James David asked the question that was worrying the three of them. "What if we don't get along with all these children?" Martha approached the three. "It's normal to have that concern. You've lived for years being just the three of you. Now you'll have to share attention space activities. But," continued Eleanor, "you have an advantage that the other children don't have." "What?" asked the twins in unison. "You live here. This is your home. The other children are visitors. You are family." Sarah Beth seemed more at ease with this explanation. "So we're like the hosts of the house having friends over to play?" "Exactly," confirmed Eleanor. On the school's first day of operation, the family was nervous but excited. 15 children arrived accompanied by their parents or guardians. Some came from the town itself, others from nearby homesteads and ranches. "Good morning, children," said Eleanor, gathering everyone in the schoolyard. "I am Teacher Eleanor, and this is my sister, Mrs. Martha." "And we are the monitors," announced Sarah Beth, naturally assuming the role of leader among the children. James Paul and James David introduced themselves, explaining they would help with practical and artistic activities. The new children were initially shy, but the natural way Sarah Beth, James Paul and James David welcomed them made all the difference. Within minutes, everyone was talking and playing together. "Do you live here at the school?" asked a 7-year-old girl named Chloe. "We live in the house right over there," explained James David, pointing to the main house. "We are Teacher Eleanor's family." "That's so cool," exclaimed a 9-year-old boy named Mason. "You are really lucky." "Why lucky?" asked Sarah Beth. "Because you have a whole family and you even live in a school. It's like an educational amusement park." Mason's innocent observation made Sarah Beth reflect. She really was lucky. For years, she lived in uncertainty, not knowing if she would have a permanent family. Now she had not just a family, but a family with an important purpose. The first day of class was a complete success. The children adapted quickly to the routine, and the 3 monitors proved to be excellent helpers. "How did it go?" asked Martha when everyone gathered for dinner. "Better than we imagined," replied Eleanor. "The children are great, and our 3 monitors were perfect." Sarah Beth was beaming. "Grandma Martha, I helped a girl read a difficult story. She was so happy when she managed it." "And I taught Mason how to make a small shelf," shared James Paul. "He said he's going to teach his dad at home." "And I started a new mural with the other children," reported James David. "Each one will draw their family, and in the end we'll have a giant mural with all the families from the school." Martha and Eleanor exchanged a look, moved. The project was working better than they had dreamed. "And you?" asked Sarah Beth. "Did you like the first day?" "We loved it," answered Eleanor. "Seeing you 3 helping other children, teaching, caring for them. It's exactly what I always dreamed of. And seeing how you've become responsible and mature," added Martha, "makes me very proud." That night, the family celebrated the success of the first day of school, but they also talked about the challenges to come. "Some of the children come from families with many difficulties," observed Eleanor. "We'll need to be extra careful with them." "What kind of difficulties?" asked James Paul. "Financial problems, parents who work too much and don't have time to help with homework, some children who have never had access to books or quality educational materials." Sarah Beth made an immediate connection. "Like us before we met Grandma Martha." "Exactly," confirmed Eleanor. "You understand better than anyone how these children feel." "Then we can really help them," concluded James David. "Absolutely. But we also need to have patience. Some of them might be angry or sad or scared. Not all of them will be receptive right away." Eleanor's observation proved correct. In the following weeks, some children adapted perfectly, but others exhibited challenging behaviors. There was the case of Tyler, an 8-year-old boy who refused to participate in activities and stayed isolated in a corner of the room. Sarah Beth, with her special sensitivity, realized the boy wasn't being rebellious, but rather scared. "Tyler," she said one morning, approaching carefully, "do you want to see my favorite books?" "I don't know how to read well," murmured Tyler, embarrassed. "Neither did I when I got here," lied Sarah Beth, trying to make the boy feel better. "Grandma Martha taught me. Do you want me to teach you too?" From that day on, Sarah Beth spent part of each morning helping Tyler with reading. In 2 weeks, the boy was participating normally in activities and had even become friends with the others. James Paul had a similar challenge with Justin, a 10-year-old boy who would purposely break materials in the art room. "Why do you do that?" asked James Paul directly, after seeing Justin break the third colored pencil of the morning. "Because at home there's nothing nice anyway," answered Justin angrily. "Why learn to make nice things if I can't take them home?" James Paul understood the problem immediately. Justin came from a very poor family, where there was no space or resources for artistic activities. He broke the materials because he felt frustrated by the difference between school and his reality at home. "Justin," said James Paul, "what if you made nice things here at school, but things that could also be useful at your house?" "How so?" "I can teach you to make small shelves, organizers, things your mother could use at home." The idea excited Justin, who from that day on became James Paul's most dedicated helper in woodworking activities. James David faced a different challenge with Madison, a 9-year-old girl who constantly criticized the drawings of others. "This drawing is ugly," Madison would say to a younger child. "This tree doesn't look like a real tree." James David realized Madison did this because she felt insecure about her own drawings. She criticized others to feel better. "Madison," he said one day, "do you want to help me teach the younger children?" "Me? But I don't know how to draw well." "Of course you do, and you know what? When we teach others, we learn even more." Madison became an excellent monitor for the younger children and completely stopped criticizing her classmates' drawings. "How do you all handle these situations so well?" asked Eleanor one evening, impressed by the three's maturity. "Because we've been through it," Sarah Beth replied simply. "When we arrived at Grandma Martha's house, we were also scared, angry, sad. And Grandma Martha always knew what to do to help us," added James Paul. "Now we can do the same for the other children," concluded James David. Martha was visibly moved. "You've become incredible people, not just smart, but wise and compassionate." "We learned from you," said Sarah Beth. "You always taught us that when someone is being difficult, it's usually because they're suffering from something." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. After 3 months of operation, the rural school had become a reference in the region. The children attending the school showed significant improvements, not only in academic performance, but also in behavior and self-esteem. Parents began to notice positive changes at home. Children who were once aggressive or withdrawn became more communicative and cooperative. "Mrs. Eleanor, Mrs. Martha," said Tyler's mother at a parent-teacher meeting, "I don't know what you did with my son, but he's unrecognizable. At home he helps with everything, reads stories to his younger siblings, and even created a little study corner in his room." "The credit isn't ours," replied Martha. "It's Sarah Beth's, who had the patience to teach Tyler to enjoy reading." "And how did Sarah Beth learn that patience?" asked the mother. "She learned by living in a family that believes all children have potential," answered Eleanor. These meetings with parents became very special moments for the family. It was rewarding to see the concrete results of their work, and it was also an opportunity for Sarah Beth, James Paul, and James David to receive recognition for the fundamental role they played at the school. "Sometimes I feel more important here at school than I felt before," confessed Sarah Beth in a family conversation. "Why, dear?" asked Martha. "Before, I was just a child who needed care. Now I'm a child who also cares for other children." "And how does that make you feel?" asked Eleanor. "Useful, like I have a purpose." James Paul agreed. "It's true. When I teach woodworking to the other boys, I feel like I'm doing something important. And when I see a child manage to draw something they've been trying for weeks," added James David, "I get happier than when I make my own drawings." Martha and Eleanor exchanged a look. The 3 children had found not only a family, but also a life purpose. "Do you know what this means?" asked Eleanor. "That we're lucky," replied Sarah Beth, "that you've discovered one of the most important things in life, that true happiness comes from helping others." "Like you two did with me," observed James Paul. "Grandma Martha could have sent me somewhere else when I arrived. I was just another kid to be a burden. And Aunt Eleanor could have kept all the money for herself instead of sending it to Grandma Martha all these years," added Sarah Beth. "But you chose to care for people even when it was hard work," concluded James David. Eleanor felt her eyes welling up. "You've understood a lesson that many adults take a lifetime to learn." By the end of the first year of operation, the school had become a small institution in the region. Besides the 15 regular children, there was a waiting list with 10 more children whose parents wanted to enroll them. "We're going to need to expand," said Eleanor during a family meeting. "Expand how?" asked Martha. "Either we limit the number of children we serve, or we build more classrooms and hire more teachers." The prospect of growth was exciting, but also worrying. "If the school grows too much," said Sarah Beth, "will it still be our family? Or will it turn into a normal school?" added James Paul. It was a legitimate concern. What made the school special was exactly the family environment, the personalized care, the individual attention each child received. "How about we have a family vote?" suggested Martha. "We all have to agree on any major change." The suggestion was accepted. Weeks passed discussing the options. Eleanor researched models of rural schools in other regions. Martha talked with the children's parents to understand their needs. The children did their own research, asking their classmates what they thought about the possibility of the school growing. "We've reached a conclusion," announced Sarah Beth one evening, speaking on behalf of the three. "We want the school to grow, but slowly." "Slowly how?" asked Eleanor. "Instead of building several new classrooms all at once," explained James Paul, "we can build one classroom at a time and make sure each new child adapts well before accepting the next one." "And we can train other older children to be monitors," suggested James David, "so there will always be someone to help the new ones." The children's proposal was sensible and demonstrated impressive maturity. "And what if children with very serious problems arrive?" asked Eleanor. "Children who need specialized care we don't know how to give." "Then we learn," replied Sarah Beth, with the simplicity of childhood. "The same way you learn to take care of us." Martha laughed. "You make everything seem so simple." "Because it is simple," insisted James Paul. "When someone needs help, we help. When we don't know how to help, we ask someone who does. And when nobody knows," completed James David, "we figure it out together." The children's philosophy became the school's official philosophy. Gradual growth, personalized attention, constant learning, and always the principle that family comes first. 2 years after the school opened, the family had found its perfect rhythm. The school served 22 children, had 2 classrooms, a woodworking shop, an art studio, and a library that was the envy of other schools in the region. Sarah Beth, now 11 years old, had become a precocious librarian, organizing reading events and helping other children discover the pleasure of books. James Paul, 13 years old, ran the woodworking shop competently, teaching not only woodworking techniques, but also responsibility, patience, and precision. James David, also 13 years old, had created an informal art therapy program, helping shy or traumatized children express themselves through drawings and paintings. "You've become natural educators," observed Eleanor during an annual family evaluation. "We learned from the best," replied Sarah Beth, referring to her and Martha. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. During the school's 3rd year of operation, the family faced its first major challenge. A 9-year-old child named Raphael arrived at the school, who had been removed from a situation of severe neglect. He was aggressive, distrustful, and refused to participate in any activity. "This case is different from the others," said Eleanor to Martha in a private conversation. "Raphael has been through serious trauma. He might need specialized help. But he might also just need time and patience," argued Martha, "like any child." Sarah Beth, who always had a special instinct for troubled children, offered to try to get close to Raphael. "Let me try, Grandma Martha. I know what it's like to be afraid of adults. For 2 weeks, Sarah Beth tried different approaches with Raphael, always without success. The boy completely ignored her, sometimes even moving away when she approached. "He doesn't want help," said Sarah Beth, discouraged after another failed attempt. "Or he wants it so much he's afraid to accept it," observed James Paul. "What do you mean?" asked Sarah Beth. "Remember when I first got here? I kept testing Grandma Martha all the time, doing things wrong on purpose to see if she would send me away." Sarah Beth remembered. James Paul had indeed been difficult in the first few months, not because he was a troubled child, but because he wanted to be sure he wouldn't be abandoned again. "Do you think Raphael is doing that?" "I'm sure of it." Armed with this new perspective, Sarah Beth completely changed her approach with Raphael. Instead of trying to get close or offer help, she simply stayed nearby, available but without pressure. "Raphael," she would say, "when you want to talk, I'll be here. It doesn't matter if it's today, tomorrow, or a month from now." Slowly, Raphael began to watch Sarah Beth with curiosity. He saw how she helped other children, how patient she was, how she never got angry or gave up on anyone. One day, after a month of attempts, Raphael approached her in the library. "Why don't you give up on me?" he asked abruptly. "Because I know what it's like to be afraid," Sarah Beth answered honestly, "and I know how good it feels when someone doesn't give up on you." "Were you ever like me?" "Different, but similar. I was also afraid to trust adults." "And what happened?" "Grandma Martha taught me that not all adults are the same. Some really do care." Raphael thought for a long time before speaking again. "Do you think Teacher Eleanor and Mrs. Martha care about me?" "I'm sure. They care about all the children who come here. Even when the child is rude and disobedient?" Sarah Beth smiled. "Especially when the child is like that, because it usually means they're hurting." It was the beginning of Raphael's recovery. It took a few more months, but little by little he opened up to the family and the other children. They discovered that, behind the aggression, was an intelligent and creative child who just needed security and affection. "How do you know how to handle such difficult cases?" asked a social worker who was following Raphael's case. "We don't know," answered Eleanor honestly. "We learn along with each child." "But do you have some method, some special technique?" "Love," answered Martha simply, "and patience, and the willingness to never give up." The social worker seemed surprised by such a simple answer. "Just that." "And family," added Sarah Beth. "All the children who come here become family. That changes everything." "How so?" James Paul explained. "When you're family, the problems belong to everyone. No one is alone with their difficulties. And when you're family," James David completed, "people don't give up on you, even when you're being difficult." The social worker was clearly impressed by the children's maturity and wisdom. "Did you learn this from your caregivers?" "We learned by living in a real family," answered Sarah Beth. "When you know you are loved, it becomes easier to love others." That conversation with the social worker marked an important moment in the school's history. From that day on, other professionals began visiting the school to understand how it achieved such positive results with children in vulnerable situations. "We're getting famous," joked James David at a family meeting. "And is that good or bad?" asked Martha. "It's good if it helps other children," replied Sarah Beth, "and bad if it gets in the way of our family." Eleanor had the same concern. "We need to be careful not to lose our essence. What makes our school special is precisely the family environment." "Then let's establish rules for the visits," suggested James Paul. "No one can disrupt the children's activities or make them feel like animals in a zoo." The suggestion was accepted. The school continued to receive visitors interested in learning about the project, but always with clear rules that prioritized the children's well-being. Over time, Eleanor and Martha began to be invited to give talks about education and caring for children in social vulnerability. Initially, they hesitated to accept these invitations. "We're not academic experts," said Eleanor. "We're just two sisters who built a family and a school." "Maybe that's exactly why people want to hear you," observed Sarah Beth, "because you talk about real experiences, not theories." "And because you get results," added James Paul. After much family debate, they decided to accept some selected invitations, always on the condition that Sarah Beth, James Paul, and James David also participated in the talks. "Why us too?" asked James David. "Because you are a fundamental part of this project," explained Eleanor. "In fact, you are the living proof that our method works." "And you have important perspectives to share," added Martha. "You know what it's like to be the child receiving care, and you also know what it's like to care for other children." The talks became very special events. Eleanor spoke about the educational aspects, Martha about the emotional and family aspects, and the three children shared their experiences, both as recipients and as caregivers. "What impresses the audience the most," observed Eleanor after a particularly successful talk, "is the maturity and wisdom of you three." "We just tell the truth about our life," said Sarah Beth. "There's not much mystery to it." "But your truth is very powerful," insisted Eleanor. "When you tell how you got here, how you felt at the beginning, how you learned to trust, how you discovered the joy of helping other children, that touches people very deeply." Indeed, after the talks, it was common for them to receive letters from educators, parents, and even other children, inspired by the family's story. "Dear Miller family," wrote a teacher from a distant town, "you taught me that education isn't about sophisticated methods or expensive resources. It's about love, dedication, and the willingness to see each child as unique and special." "Hi, Sarah Beth," wrote a 10-year-old girl. "I heard your talk at my school, and I want to tell you that you inspired me to be more patient with my little brother. I used to think he was very annoying, but after hearing you talk about caring for other children, I started helping him with his homework. Now we're better friends." These letters moved the whole family and reinforced their certainty that they were on the right path. "We're making a difference in the lives of people we don't even know," observed James Paul. "That's how good things spread," said Martha. "One family helps another, who helps another, and so it goes." 5 years after opening the school, the Miller family had become a national reference in education and care for vulnerable children. But for them, the most important thing remained the daily life of the school, and the certainty that every child who passed through there left transformed. "How many children have come through our school?" asked Sarah Beth, now 14, and clearly preparing to follow a career in education. Eleanor did the math. 73 children over these 5 years. "And did all of them improve?" asked James Paul, now 16 and already planning to study pedagogy, specialized in educational woodworking. "All of them without exception," replied Martha with pride. "Some more quickly, others took more time, but every single one left here better than they arrived." James David, also 16 and preparing to study art therapy, made the most profound observation. "You know what I think is the most incredible thing about all this?" "What?" they all asked. "That we improved along with them. Every child who arrived here taught us something new about care, patience, love." "It's true," agreed Sarah Beth. "I learned to be a teacher by teaching other children to read. I learned to be patient by teaching nervous children to work with wood," said James Paul. "And I learned that drawing with someone is more fun than drawing alone," added James David. Eleanor and Martha looked at each other, moved by the maturity of the 3 young people they had raised. "You have become extraordinary people," said Eleanor. "We learned from you," replied Sarah Beth. "You taught us that family is about taking care of each other, and that's what we did with all the children who came here." That night, the family looked back on all the years they had lived together, from the day of the flood that revealed the trunk with the letters to the present moment, where they were a solid family with a life project impacting hundreds of people. "Do you know what was the most important moment of this whole journey?" asked Martha. "When you two reunited," suggested Sarah Beth. "When you found the trunk," suggested James Paul. "When the school opened," suggested James David. Martha shook her head. "The most important moment was when you 3 came into my life. You taught me how to be a real mother, you gave me purpose, you prepared me for this project." Eleanor agreed. "If it weren't for you 3, I would never have dreamed of a school like this. It was you who inspired me to buy that rural property, and to dream of a place where we could educate and care for children together. "So all of this happened because of us?" asked James Paul, surprised. "All of this happened because love generates more love," replied Eleanor. "Martha loved you, I loved Martha from afar, and that love multiplied until it reached where we are today." Sarah Beth, always reflective, asked an important question. "And what will happen when we grow up and leave home? Will the school continue?" It was a concern that Eleanor and Martha had already considered. The three young people were preparing for adulthood. They had their own dreams and plans. "The school will continue," Eleanor assured them, "because you have already taught us everything we need to know, and because there will always be children needing care and education." "But it won't be the same without you," said Martha honestly. "Who said we're leaving?" asked Sarah Beth, smiling. "What do you mean?" "Grandma Martha, Aunt Eleanor, do you really think that after all this we would want to build our lives away from here?" James Paul agreed. "This is our home, our family, our life project. Why leave?" "But what about college, independent careers?" asked Eleanor. "We can study to improve our work here even more," replied James David. "I want to study art therapy so I can better help the children who arrive traumatized. I want to study specialized pedagogy for children with learning difficulties," said Sarah Beth. "And I want to study therapeutic woodworking techniques," added James Paul. "I discovered that working with wood helps anxious children calm down." Eleanor and Martha were moved to realize that the three young people wanted to dedicate their lives to the same project that had united the family. "Are you sure?" asked Martha. "You don't feel pressured to stay?" "Grandma Martha," said Sarah Beth tenderly, "you've already given us the greatest freedom a person can have, the freedom to choose our own path. And we choose to stay here with our family, doing the work we love. Besides," added James Paul, "when we have our own children, they'll grow up in this amazing environment, learning from a young age how to care for other children." "Or when we adopt children," said James David, "because I've already decided I want to adopt, just like you did with us." The conversation was getting very emotional. Eleanor and Martha realized they had raised not only 3 wonderful children, but also 3 dedicated future educators who would carry on the family project. "Then let's plan the future," said Eleanor, ever practical. "If you're going to study to specialize, we need to organize things here so the school keeps running during that time." "Actually," said Sarah Beth, "I've already thought about that. We can do distance learning or weekend college courses. That way we don't have to stop working at the school. And we can take turns," suggested James Paul. "Each one specializes in a different area, but everyone keeps working here." "I like the idea," approved Martha. "That way you become even more qualified for the work you already do." James David had another idea, "And when we graduate, we can give courses to other educators who want to work with vulnerable children. That way we multiply our impact." The prospect of training other educators excited the whole family. They could not only continue caring for children directly, but also prepare other people to do the same work in other places. "We're planning an empire of love," joked Eleanor. "An empire of families," corrected Sarah Beth, "because the foundation of everything is always family." That night, for the first time in years, the family talked until very late, making plans for the next 10, 20 years. They dreamed of a network of rural schools spread across the country, all based on the same principle of family education. They imagined hundreds of children being cared for and educated with love. They pictured Sarah Beth running an educator training center, James Paul creating therapeutic woodworking workshops, James David developing art therapy programs for traumatized children. "You know what moves me most about all these plans?" said Martha. "What?" "That it all started with a silly fight between 2 sisters, went through 23 years of separation, and led to this, a united family building a better future for hundreds of children." Eleanor held her sister's hand. "And all because a trunk appeared among the rubble of a flood." "No," corrected Sarah Beth, "all because 2 sisters never stopped loving each other, even when they were apart. The trunk just revealed what was already there." The 14-year-old's observation struck a deep chord in everyone's hearts. Truly, the love between Eleanor and Martha had never disappeared. It had only been temporarily prevented from expressing itself by circumstances and pride. "Sarah Beth," said Eleanor, "you've become a very wise young woman." "I learned from the best family in the world," she replied, hugging Martha and Eleanor at the same time. The twins joined the embrace, and there, in that cozy room of a rural house, 5 people who had found each other through loss, suffering, and misunderstanding celebrated the family they had built together. Outside, the ranch slept in peace. The school was ready to welcome more children the next morning. The community garden was growing vigorously. The woodworking shop was organized for a new class of apprentices. The art studio was full of half-finished projects waiting to be completed. And in the midst of it all, a family that had risen from the ashes of a flood kept growing, learning, loving, and caring for every child who arrived needing a home. Years later, when Sarah Beth would become the director of a national rural education foundation, when James Paul would develop internationally recognized therapeutic woodworking techniques, when James David would create an art therapy method used in pediatric hospitals across the country, when Eleanor would write books on family pedagogy, and when Martha would become an inspirational speaker for adoptive families, they would all always look back to that night as the moment they truly understood the transformative power of family love. But that was still in the future. At that moment, they were just a happy family, gathered in a room, making plans and dreaming of ways to spread love throughout the world. And perhaps that was exactly what made it all so special, the simplicity of a family that discovered that shared love multiplies infinitely. From the chest found among the rubble to the dreams of transforming lives across the entire country, the Miller family's journey was living proof that it is never too late to rebuild relationships. It is never too late to form a family, and it is never too late to discover that life's greatest purpose is to care for one another. The flood had washed away an old, worn-out house, but it had revealed a far more precious treasure, the discovery that true love withstands any storm, and that a family built with love is capable of weathering any challenge life presents. End of story. This was a fictional story created to touch our hearts. Now tell us what you thought. Do you believe Martha and Eleanor made the right choices by dedicating their lives to caring for children? Share your honest opinion in the comments. If this story touched your heart, leave your like and especially subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories.